welcome back to the Sharon Moore Show. I'm Sharon, your host. Today, as I told you before, I'm doing a new special segment I just put in the show called Extraordinary Drummers. Today, I tell you, since I was about 10 years old, I've always loved this guy. I've always been around him. I've kind of sort of patterned my life after him. I've kind of sort of tried to do what he did along the way. He even moved to California after I learned that he was here. Of course, you know I'm talking about Funky George Brown. How do you begin to even speak of the success of this guy? Great humanitarian, great philanthropist, great songwriter. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Founding member of the group Kool and the Gang. We can go on and on and on and on here. As you can see, I got in my hand one of my favorite songs by them. One of their biggest hits too, Celebration. Come on, let's go on over and meet him. Today our guest is Funky George Brown. Here on the Sharon Moore Show. Okay, here I am with George Brown, Funky George. Right, George?
George? Yeah, he's asking me right here. Yeah, you're with me. Hey, Sharon.
Thank you for coming on the show, doing the Sharon Moore Show.
My pleasure.
Is that
I've been following you on Facebook.
And
checking out the different musicians, the drummers that you've interviewed. I think it's great, man.
Appreciate it, man. They all asked me to talk to you. They said, can you get George? Can you get George?
Oh, yeah, I read that.
Take me all the way back, George.
Back to where?
Storms. Is it Storms Street or Storms Avenue?
You don't know?
Storms. I think it was Storms Avenue because it was pretty long, yeah.
Or 46 Storms Avenue, to be exact.
How did you happen to become a drummer, George? How did you get started?
As I told you a long time ago, when you were 12, drummers are born, not made, I guess.
That's a good way of thinking of it.
You know, growing up, I used to play with like little knives and spoons, you know, and it turned into getting some drumsticks and beating on the tables and the walls. And I decided to buy a tom-tom, right? Only a tom-tom. And it was at a thrift store on Monticello Avenue, right? So I set that up on a little snare stand and play on that. But I don't think that tom-tom cost more than $5. Old beat up tom-tom. Near Lincoln High. And what I did, I had a couple of paper routes in the early stages, and I bought a snare drum. And around that time I met Khalees, Ronald Bell, Robert Mickens. Ricky Westfield was my neighbor, so we were there. So we formed that unit called the Jazz Birds.
That was at Lincoln High School?
Before Lincoln High School.
Oh, before Lincoln.
I met them before I was in 8th grade.
That was grade school.
Hello. And so.
What grade school did you go to? You went to 21, didn't you? PS 21, was that right? No. Where'd you go?
I went to 18, and then I went to Peter Stuyvesant, which is 11th school, up in the square.
Oh, yeah.
It was totally different. Yeah, it was a totally different.
Went to 21?
No. Khalees and Kool went to 22 school.
Okay.
Ricky and I went to 18, and he went on to 17 school. I went to PS 11.
How'd your parents feel about that tom-tom and banging it in the house and going?
Well, you know, living in those tenements that we lived in, you know, those Cold Water Railroad, they had storage units in the basement, right, under someone's apartment that were always flooded with water from the toilets, because, you know, we lived in the community, that, you know, at that part, you know, not that the community was bad, the community was the greatest thing ever traded. But the people in my home at the time, in the tenement, they were okay with me playing the drums. At a point, my mother brought me a bass drum. And so I started getting, you know, some cheap cymbals, and I had the snare, the tom-tom, and the bass drum. And I used to practice down there all the time, every day after school. I was down there practicing, and nobody minded. Nobody said, "Hey, kid, you know, stop." And remember the ad-libs?
Yeah.
Where Danny from the ad-libs used to live on the street, the same on Storms Avenue, and I practiced so much. And one day I came out of the basement. My mother was on the porch, and he said, "We're gonna take you on the road, George." You. like a kid, I'm like, "Yeah, he was at Mom, he was at yeah." He's like 12 years. They will take you on the road. Anyway, so that began my drummer. I went and took a couple of lessons with the Shirelles drummer at the time, and he said, "Hey, man, you're natural," you know. And he gave me a Buddy Rich, the book, 16 Essential Rudiments, and that was it. I took a couple of those, and I kind of figured out what a 16th note is, and the 8th note, and the quarter notes, and beamed eighths, and dotted eighths, and started, you know, on my road to becoming a better drummer, you know, and getting the chops together, learning all the paradiddles, all the rudiments, you know. I got it to a point where I think I was pretty proficient. I wanted to become, like most musicians, much more proficient in those rudiments and apply them to the drum kit. And that was the thing. How do you apply this to the kit? You know what I mean? You know, but it worked out in some ways. What gave me my greatest pleasure, though, is playing drums was playing jazz, because it freed me up. Like most musicians in jazz, you're freed up to explore your talent, to explore you, and you can be you as a jazz drummer, especially when it came to solos, and especially when it came to just certain parts of the music where you can play a break, you know, that's not interfering with what's going on with the music, and add to it. Jazz drumming to me is a little more musical than the pop drumming. And I'm not lambasting pop or folk drumming, but jazz drumming has a musicality to it.
It's a lot more notes.
You know, you know. I mean, you got to go in the funk kind of like that, but you're more free. You know, you play drums. You're freer, you know, to play things and to invent. As long as you swing it and keep it, you know, keep it grooving, man. You know, and the different time signatures you can play in it, you know, as the groove is going on and you swing, ding dang, ding ding, you know, that stuff.
Right.
You know, you can play all that in you know, when you're playing jazz. So that's, I think, us doing that as the Jazzbirds and later on the Jazziacs, it lent a lot to going into becoming the funk drummer, the pop drummer, and we, as musicians, not just me as a musician and drummer, but the whole band brought that element of jazz. You can hear it, you know, in all the lines, the horn lines, you know, the funk horn lines, and the bass, Cool's bass playing, and my drumming, you know. And he and I used to really lock. We had that bass lock, you know.
You still hear it?
You still hear it, yeah.
You went to Lincoln High School, right?
I went to Lincoln, yeah.
Were you in the band there? In the school
went to
band?
music class.
What was the music class?
Yeah,
You didn't do the marching band?
Believe it or not, you know what the music teacher's name was back then?
There was a lady, but I don't know if she was...
This is the guy when I was back there in the Mr. Funk.
Oh, wow.
That's the truth. His name was Mr. Funk. And he played guitar. You know, he said, "You got the right name."
Wow.
Mr. Funk. You know. So, you know, you learn. But I don't think, believe it or not, I learned much in the Lincoln High School of music, because it wasn't something that, you know.
Pretty corny.
I think just with my alone and with the guys, the real music education came about. I know Khalees was in 22 school. I don't know if he was in the band or not, but that's when he picked up the saxophone. He used to play the mellophone and the saxophone. You know, he plays bass, drums, different things. You know, we're all multi-instrumentalists. Is one thing.
Yes.
From that point, I mean, I went and studied kettle drums. I wanted to become a composer of serious music, right? So I wanted to get to Manhattan School of Music. And in order to get into those schools of music, you have to take an audition. And playing a trap set, there's no audition in playing the drum set and the trap set. You can't audition for an orchestra like that. So it has to be like kettle drums or, you know, piano or xylophone, all the rhythm section things that had tone to them. So in order to get into that school, I went and studied the kettle drums.
How old were you when you started listening to Elvin?
Oh my God, man! I think I was listening to Elvin when we first got together. Ronnie and all of us, 13 years old. Good evening, New Jersey. You know, it's been 50 years, and for all the awards and accolades that we've gotten, I think this is the most esteemed. This is the highest. This is the pinnacle for us. You know, we started out practicing in St. John's Church in Jersey City, in the Church of Incarnation, yes. And great jazz musicians used to come, like Pharoah Sanders and McCoy Tyner. And I remember when Pharoah was teaching Ronald how to clean his horn in the sink there. They saw something within us at that point. And it just goes to show the hard work, dedication, and desire will take you to your greatest heights. We love you, New Jersey, and we thank you. We thank you, New Jersey Hall of Fame. What we used to do was go to Rick West, Rick's house, and we bring all the jazz albums, and we sit there and listen. You know, all these pre-teens and young teens, 13-year-olds, 12, and listen to jazz. You're sitting there like, yeah, man, listen to that. You know, listen to Art Farmer. You know, go down to Khalees's house. You know, and back then his mother, when he put on train, hey, what is he playing? What is all that? What is all that? You know what I mean? And we were like, you know.
Had you guys already started the band by the time you
were
was 13?
We were the Jazzbirds then.
And you was 13 at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, isn't that something?
I met Charles my first day in high school, Clayton Smith.
Wow.
I'm walking across to algebra class, and he's seeing this big stocky guy, because you were stocky, right? And I'm going to algebra, and he goes, I hear you play drum. I said, man, I'm that good. Everybody knows me. You know, the city knows me. No, it wasn't that. It was that he lived across the street from my grandparents and my cousins, and he was teaching my cousin guitar. That's what it turned out to be. But through Charles said, hey, man, you know, like I saw him like the next day, you know, a piano player. I said, yeah, at Rick West. And we got Ricky. And we went on to became a group called Clayton Smith and the Rhythms. And then we did a little shuffle song. His father put together a session for us in Newark, New Jersey, right? And it was one of those, like Bo did it. So we did that. His dad probably arranged with WNJR so we can come in, and they played it once. We thought. They probably just played it and said it was on the air and threw it in the garbage can. But I mean, I can imagine what that little acetate would be worth today.
Mm-hmm. Smithsonian.
Yeah. Well, we're in the Smithsonian.
Cool.
The African American Smithsonian, the one that was just that President Obama went down. Yeah, we're in that. You know, as a matter of fact, I just shared a photograph of Jonathan Azu, who was the management for Cool and myself, pointing at one of Cool's bases in that Smithsonian. Yeah.
So then, where did you go after that? You guys had started putting together the band, but as a drummer, you've never been a side man, have you? Or have you?
Here and there, because what happened was before we became the Soul Town Band, remember?
Mm-hmm.
We used to play for all those artists. But in that time period, I would play with a gentleman, I got called a couple of days too, called Duke Washington, who was a sax player, who came out of the swing band era. You know, he came out of the era. He was in his 50s then. And I met him, I just got off the stage, I was 17, I was at the Continental Ballroom in Newark, you know, right? Yeah. And I had to go outside. I had an ABC card, which allowed me to perform. But after performance, you either had to be out dressing room or you had to go outside. So I'm walking through the crowd, 17-year-old, and this gentleman comes up and says, "Hey, Papa, I like the way you play those drums." And I'm looking at this guy. He said, "You want a job?" I said, "Yeah, we pay $50 a night." I'm saying, "I want the job." He said, "You got to wear black jacket, pants, white shirt, maybe a tie, and I'll pick you up." And we started talking about where you live, you know, the whole deal. And I said, well, at that time we were working 6 nights a week at the Blue Note on Bradford Place. So from 9 to 2 p.m., 9 to 2 a.m., 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. at night, Tuesdays through Sundays, you know, and go to school too. So what happened was so I started working with Duke as a sideman. Playing all the after-hour clubs in New York, and upstate, pretty upstate, like Poughkeepsie and stuff like that.
Right.
But all those after-hour clubs.
What kind of stuff would y'all play?
The music of the time, you know, Hip Hugger, you know, Shotgun.
Wow. Shoot Before You Run now, that one?
Yeah, Shoot Before You Run, and Duke would be, and so I'm playing with older guys, I'm a teenager, right? And Duke would say, when I play, that means everybody come to the bandstand, we get ready to hit. So I was learning all these, you know, how the older gentlemen did it, the older musicians, how they worked, and how they performed, and how they kept everything in an organized way and very professional. I worked with Timothy Wilson. Remember Timothy Wilson?
Oh yeah.
He had about 3 hit records. I used to play drums for him.
That's way back too.
Yeah, I used to play drums for him, man. You know, he'd come in, his hair was all, you know, he had his gold suit. All the girls, "Oh, Timmy, Timmy!" He'd be in the city, you know, he's playing, you know, Queen of Hearts. Okay, you know. So all that, and I used to play for also a blues artist named Sleepy King, and Sleepy was a pianist, and Sleepy had an album out called "Don't Push Your Luck." Blues, don't push your luck. You know, so I think that was a wonderful learning experience. And these were much older men, you know, as a kid, a teenager. You know, it was a very wonderful experience. So when we were discovered by Gene Red, by the time I was 18, 19 years old, you know, all of us. I used to play with the older guys when they had a John Coltrane Memorial Festival up in Mount Morris Park, right? And they had all the great jazz musicians there. And the Five Sounds, which were the older brother, like Robert Mick and Spike's brother, was part of the Five Sounds. And one drummer was in Vietnam at that time. And Vincent Hall, he couldn't make it for some reason, so they said, you playing drums with us. And so I was playing drums with the older guys, and I remember I was talking to Spike's sister, and she said, "Don't you remember when you guys were playing, we were going, Jersey Boys, Jersey Boys," to the audience, and we were playing jazz, man, you know. And this was John Coltrane, you know. Just a lot of things like that, man.
What was happening with the, not the name Kool and the Gang, but what was happening with you guys as you was in those formative years? Had you started to come together there too? Had other members start to come together?
Well, you know, that's when, with Chuck Smith, that's when we started Soul Town, and we used to play. We had a manager at that time, and we'd play all those different, the Kenya Club, Maxie's Corner, you know, proms, weddings, you know, like back then we were the band, you know. We were like the band in Jersey City, in that area. Everybody would book us for all kinds of things, you know. We started filming, and we cut our chops, or teeth, actually, on playing the Motown sound, the Atlantic sound, the Chicago sound, you know, the West Coast, New York, the whole thing, because each artist came up and they sang some songs from, you know, from those era, like Gene Chandler was from Chicago. You got the Memphis sound that we played. And one thing, you know, remember Steve Cropper and those guys from Memphis? They did all the, with Al Green, they did all the music.
Okay, the studio guys.
Yeah, the studio guys.
Right.
I was in India, in Mumbai, and I'm sitting there, and they were at the next table, And I mean, of course, they preceded us by years, right? And I had to go over and say, hey, you know, we stole so much from you guys, man. You know, but it was, you know, those are the type of things. That's what helped us become cool again. We knew all styles of music, and we loved jazz, and we were able to play with all these different artists every night. You know, at the Blue Note Lounge, as the at the Max's Corner and the Kenya Club. And then we left, and we had no name. We were the New Dimensions. You remember Tom Pakitas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
Tom Pakitas.
On the Junction.
In the Junction.
Yeah.
You know, I went to see Tom when my stepdad passed away, and we were just right down the street from there. And I went up to his office. Hey, Tom. I used, you know, as a young kid, as a really young kid, I used to work for Tom. I used to clean up his office. He said, hey, go get me a chocolate, hot chocolate with Brummels, right? With a dollop of cream on the top. I'd go do that, clean the office, shuffle stuff. So I was always like a workaholic, work bee, doing something. Had to, because otherwise I get nervous.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you guys worked around Tom like that.
I used to work.
Wow.
Yeah. And Tom was, you know, activist. He is insurance, right?
Insurance, right?
And everything.
Insurance,
and he did a lot of things for the black community.
He just passed away, didn't he?
Tom passed away, more than about 7 years ago.
It's been that
long, right?
Because I remember Roscoe telling me about that.
Yeah, Roscoe. He took Roscoe under his wing. Yeah. Roscoe, they had the group that became quite successful themselves.
Yeah.
What was the band? Undefeated
Movement.
Yeah, they became quite famous themselves.
Yeah, single out. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and
that's where I met you at the Junction. Upstairs at the Junction. That's where I met you at. Well, so when you was came out of the Sideman thing, as you were saying, and had all the
I was still with the guys too.
Right, that's what I was going to ask. Was all the original members together by then?
It was, yeah. By that time, we had Cool, Ronald, Rick, Spike, Cletus, DT, myself. That's the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the Magnificent Seven. Yeah, and that's what I used to call it. And when Gene Red, the genius, came along and discovered how we were playing, what we were playing, and all those things, and we molded it into molded us into recording artists. Chuck, I always called Charles the Clearest Chuck. Hey, Chuck.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right, and he said we need a rhythm guitar player, and he got Woody Sparrow.
Oh.
Remember Woody?
I think I remember Woody.
Woody played his ass off. He was one of the greatest, man. Because he loved Jimi Hendrix, so he played like Hendrix.
Oh wow!
Back then, and he was a kid. You know, we were all kids. He played that guitar, and Charles brought him in. So Charles played lead. Woody played a rhythm, and that was the cool thing that you heard in the early records.
As a drummer, how did you incorporate Elvin Jones into your playing? Because when you listen to it, you were playing funk and other things, but it seems to me like there was other elements.
Well, it's like when you hear Wild and Peaceful, right?
Right. Right. There's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah.
That's Elvin.
That's
you know, just that power. That, you know,
Right. But when you was doing funky stuff and Hollywood swingers, you was putting that stuff in those records too.
Absolutely.
How'd you feel you can get away with it?
Especially in funky stuff when he goes
that power stuff.
Right in the bass. Yeah, it's Elvin. I mean, Elvin didn't play that pattern, but you know, you remember Freddie Waits?
Yeah.
Okay, we were on a show with Freddie Waits, and Freddie was really famous back then, right? I mean, the great jazz drummer. Well, there's some things I left out in the early stages, but we were on the show in Bayonne, New Jersey, and Freddie, they were the stars, of course. And I heard Freddie Waits' foot Once again, I had to be about 50 then. I'm like, man.
30-second notes or something?
Because they used to call the jazz musicians drop the bombs.
Right, bombs. Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know that stuff.
Man, look at this.
Yeah.
Like, I was standing in the wings going, wow. Back in the early stages when we were the Jazzbirds, Pharoah Sanders and all those guys used to come to the St. John's Church where we would practice at, and they would actually show us things. They would show us. Pharoah used to show Ronald how to clean that saxophone. Pharoah Sanders, who was major saxophonist, would train everybody, and all these guys would come. There was a gentleman named James Tyler, who was a sax player. I think he used to play with Bud Powell, I believe, at the time. And I remember I was playing with him. I'm swinging, and I was swinging too hard or whatever. Not too hard good, too hard bad. He said, "Take it easy, young fella. You're gonna make it." And he's playing. He's running, and I'm playing. He's an older gentleman. And I'm playing. He's his horn. He's
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's
amazing times, man. And all these great jazz musicians were always there, with us, showing us. And even when we got to the point of being cool in the gang, when we were able to go to the Uptown Theater in Philadelphia, those guys, the orchestra used to say, "You guys are going to carry this on." They used to actually say, "You the guys who carry this thing forward." Same thing with the Apollo. We did so many Apollo amateur hours and come in third. We never win because we're playing jazz.
Did you ever see him throwing fruit at people?
No. They gave us always high compliment. Honey Coles, remember Honey?
Honey Coles.
And
the
Honey
MC.
Huh?
Wasn't he the MC?
Honey was the MC.
Yeah.
But Honey goes back.
Boy, he going back, George.
Honey goes back, but he goes way back.
Oh yeah, he goes back to vaudeville probably.
Right. And he would say, you're going to hear about these young men one day, they got third place.
Wow.
And so one day, I'm at Kennedy Airport, and Honey was there, and I think we're going to Europe, and he's going to Brazil. And I went up and said, "Mr. Coles," and we're like, "Yeah, I remember you guys. I always say, I told you, you know what I mean?" And he's going to Brazil, and we're going to Europe. He was a hoofer.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
So.
What was the stuff you think you left out from the early days? Does it come back to your recollection as you speaking?
Yeah, like I said, St. John's Church, us performing there, and all the great jazz musicians coming through and dropping knowledge on us. That's what went down. Yeah, you can hear a lot of stuff in the progressions that we play as well.
Do you remember playing the Showmobiles?
Absolutely.
I saw you guys with the
Showmobiles. Used to play the Showmobiles around Jersey City.
You was probably about 18, 19 then?
Yeah. About 18, because 18, 19, because by that time we were signing the contract at 19 years old.
Y'all was so hot. Y'all was sizzling. It was like sizzling. I remember y'all on the Showmobiles. Y'all used to play the parks and the projects. But y'all was way in front of your time. I mean, y'all was like professional and super tight even then.
Yeah, we were. Like I said, I was playing with a bunch of guys 4 times my age, 3 to 4 times my age at the time. And Cool did some of the dates with Duke with me. We sit in the back, and they talking, and the older men. So we're 2 kids sitting back there listening to these old guys, and we're on our way to Mount Vernon or something like that. Cool, talking all that stuff, man. We teenagers, like bass and drum. I was like,
How did y'all get picked up with Delight? How did that come about?
It's a wonderful story.
I used to go up there and hang out with Stan and all the guys.
Stan Price?
I used to go up and hang out with Stan.
Man, was a killer. Stan be like, "We got to get to the station right now. We got to get to www, right? You got that big cowboy hat on. We got to get there now."
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Okay, Stan." Your heart be pounding in your chest, right? Yeah. This is a big cat. Okay, we're going. We're going now, right, Stan?